I was hauling bricks under a burning 40-degree sun when my billionaire parents tracked me down. Crying, they begged me to return to the family. But after binge reading 500 rich boy drama novels, overnight, I knew the golden rule: never give the fake son a chance to frame me. Since my blood makes me the rightful heir to billions, I just had to play along. I became so obedient that when my parents kept the fake son around, I gladly accepted it. When they gave him the master bedroom and the trust fund, I packed my bags without a word. I happily took the guest room. I do not spend much anyway, so the trust fund can buy him sports cars. On my birthday, my fiancée stood me up to go racing with him. I calmly told her to enjoy herself and spent my birthday completely alone. Even when I found out my fiancée was pregnant, after my parents and her gave a few cheap excuses, I just shrugged. When is the abortion? Today I will drive her to the clinic. I walked to the door, leaving the three of them staring at each other in shock before they followed. Right outside the operating room, she grabbed my wrist and asked, "Are you not even sad? This is our child. Do you really not care?" I looked down at her beautiful cold face, flinching as if my empty eyes burned her. She stammered, "I just feel like you have changed so much since returning to this family." I smiled, but the warmth did not reach my eyes. "Is that so? People change." I looked past her to my parents and whispered, "But you three never change. Your hearts and minds still belong only to him." As she turned toward the operating room, I answered her in my head. "Yes, I changed. I already signed the papers to sever ties and call off our engagement. Once my visa clears at the end of the month, I will leave them forever." On her discharge day, the weather was beautiful. I drove her home, then slowly headed back to the family mansion. Just as I turned onto the tree-lined driveway, the fake son suddenly jumped out from the bushes, throwing himself directly in front of my car. I slammed on the brakes and spun the wheel, but I still clipped him. I jumped out, called for help, and contacted the police. The paramedics and officers arrived almost immediately. As the driver, I had to cooperate with the investigation and followed the ambulance to the hospital. Soon my parents and her rushed into the lobby. Worry and panic were written all over their faces. I stood quietly in the dark shadows of the hallway, watching them obsess over him. Deep down in my cold, empty heart, not a single spark of emotion remained. Finally, the operating light went out, and the doctor stepped out. They rushed forward as the doctor pulled off his mask. "The surgery went well, and his life is not in danger. He will wake up once the anesthesia wears off." They gasped in relief, but the doctor continued. "However, during our full body examination, we found numerous old and new bruises and soft tissue injuries. They do not look like they are from the car accident. It looks more like a physical beating. You might want to look into that." Instantly, my parents and her turned completely pale. Seeing he was fine, I turned to leave. She grabbed my wrist and snapped, "You run him over and think you can just walk away without explaining yourself." I paused to answer, but a weak voice echoed from the hospital room. He was calling for them. The three immediately pushed past me and ran inside. Through the glass door, I saw him lying there, his head wrapped in bandages. My parents asked him softly, "What on earth happened? Where did those injuries come from?" He glanced timidly at me through the door, acting hesitant. "It is nothing, just my own clumsiness." She stepped closer to the bed, her voice demanding, "Tell the truth, who did this to you?" He whimpered, "I knew my brother was coming home today, and I wanted to talk to him. I went outside when I heard his car, but when he saw me, he drove straight into me." My father exploded with rage, rushing out of the room to point at my face. "You monster! What did he ever do to you?" "He only took a fraction of our attention and a little of her care. Everything else is yours. Why can you not stand him? Why do you want him dead?" My mother looked at me with absolute disappointment. "How could you become so evil? We thought you were just stubborn and a little jealous of him. I never imagined your heart could be this vicious." She stood behind them, her eyes cold and disappointed. I watched their dramatic performance with total indifference. In my heart, the last spark of feeling finally died. I did not even bother to defend myself, speaking calmly. "So how are you going to punish me this time? Make it quick. I want to go back to sleep." My total indifference and impatience pushed my father over the edge. A hard slap crashed across my face. My father turned pale with rage, but the moment his hand landed, he froze, regret flashing in his eyes. My cheek burned and swelled immediately. I slowly turned my head back, wiped my lip, and looked at him. My eyes were dead calm as I asked, "Is that it? Can I go now?" My father was too stunned to speak. She stepped forward, her chest heaving in anger. Thoroughly provoked by my attitude, she snarled, "You want a punishment? He has 108 injuries. Since you did it, you will pay for every single one of them." She called her bodyguards over. "Drag him to the front gate. Tell the crowd that anyone who hits him gets $50,000 until he is beaten bloody." Even my parents gasped in disbelief. I looked at her with no fear or pleading in my eyes, only a cold, empty void. My gaze was like an icy blade cutting straight into her chest. She flinched, her heart tightening in sudden panic. Regret and terror instantly gripped her. Her voice shook slightly as she quickly backtracked. "But if you apologize to him right now and promise to never do it again, I will call them off." I stared at her in silence for a few seconds, then let out a slow, mocking smile. My silence cut deeper than any insult, driving her into a blind rage. Shamed and furious, she screamed at the guards, "What are you waiting for? Drag him down." 2 guards grabbed my arms. Passing the room, I saw my parents already back at his bedside, comforting him as if nothing outside even mattered. They dragged me to the busy plaza outside the hospital. True to her word, the guards started throwing cash, shouting, "Hit this guy once and get $50,000. Cold, hard cash. At first, the crowd just watched, too afraid to move. Then a desperate, greedy man rushed forward and shoved me. When the guard handed him a thick stack of cash, the crowd lost their minds. People surged forward like a tidal wave. Fists, kicks, and slaps rained down on me like a storm. Screaming filled my ringing ears as banknotes flew through the air. Pain consumed me from every direction. My vision blurred into a bloody haze, and I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in a quiet private room. Only the heart monitor beeped. I weakly pressed the call button, waiting so long I almost passed out again. Finally, an annoyed nurse shoved the door open. "What is it now?" I croaked. "Water, please." She rolled her eyes, slammed a glass of cold water onto the table, and snapped, "Drink it and stop calling. I am busy." She walked out. I stared at the door, my heart cold. This was her family's hospital. Since she treated me like trash, my status meant nothing. Even in a private room, the staff had no respect for me. I lay there in silence, enduring the pain. A few days later, a nurse carelessly changed my bandages. As she rushed out, her cartwheel caught my hanging IV line. With a violent tug, the needle ripped out of my vein, blood spraying across my hand. The sudden pull dragged me off the mattress, slamming me onto the hard floor. Agonizing pain flared through my broken ribs and my vision went black. The nurses gasped, but instead of helping me up, they glared and snapped, "Watch what you are doing." "We are in a hurry to deliver pastries to Master Yunzhou. If we are late, it is on you." They pushed their cart and walked out. I lay there gasping through the agonizing pain in my chest. I tried to crawl but could not move. Just then, the door opened and she walked in. Finding me on the floor, her face turned pale. Rushing over, she cried out, "Zhiyan, what happened?" She lifted me, seeing my bloody hand and pale face. Instantly, she hit the call button, screaming at the staff. "Is this how you treat your patients?" The nurses trembled and stammered. I spoke up calmly. "It is nothing. They just accidentally tripped me." Her body froze, guilt stabbing her chest once more. She turned to the doctor, her voice icy. "Fire those 2 immediately. Get them out of my hospital. Tell the head nurse to investigate this entire floor. If this happens again, everyone gets fired." The doctor quickly patched up my bleeding hand and checked my ribs. Fortunately, there was no permanent damage. Once he left, we were alone. She sat beside me, staring at my pale face. She reached out to touch my cheek, but hesitated and pulled back, gently adjusting my blanket. "Have they been treating you like this the whole time?" she asked softly. "I was right next door with him. I know I was distracted, but you should have told me." I closed my eyes. There was no need. Frustration flared in her eyes, but she forced it down. "What do you mean? No need. I am your fiancé. You can talk to me." "Are you still mad about the hospital gates?" I was out of my mind with anger, "but you still shouldn't have hit him." I opened my eyes, looking at her with total indifference. "Are you finished, Su Shinran? I need to rest. Thanks for helping me up." I gently pulled my blanket away, turned around, and ignored her. Staring at my back, panic washed over her again. She opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. Suddenly her phone rang. It was him. "Shinran, where are you? My cuts are burning again." She glanced at my cold, turned back, stood up, and whispered, "Get some rest. I will check on you later." With that, she rushed out. Over the next few days, she actually came by every afternoon, clumsily trying to care for me and make conversation. She even offered to take me to Northern Europe for the lights once I healed. Every time I just gave her a blank look. "No thanks. I am not interested. Go tend to your own things." I treated her with the polite distance of a complete stranger. When she suggested a trip to France and I rejected her again, she snapped. Rising to her feet, she glared down at me. Anger and confusion burned in her eyes. "What do you want from me, Zhiyan?" I apologized. "I compensated you. I spend every single day here. What more do you want?" I slowly looked up, staring at her beautiful face for a long time. Then I whispered, "I want you to leave." She froze, blinking as if she had misheard. "What did you say?" Word by word, my voice remained dead calm. "I said I want you out of my room, out of my sight, and out of my life forever." She stood there completely paralyzed. Staring at me coldly, Su Shinran snapped, "Shen Zhiyan, do you even know what you are saying?" My face remained blank. But before I could speak, The ward door slammed open. My crying parents burst in. Shinran, it is terrible. Yunzhou is in trouble. Shinran desperately tried to mask her shock. Frowning, she asked what happened. My father, sweating profusely, cried, Yunzhou got into a fight at a club today and accidentally cracked someone's head open. The police are here to arrest him. Yunzhou hid behind my mother, trembling, whimpering. Shinran, please help me. I didn't mean to. I can't go to jail. Su Shinran frowned, trying to stay calm. Is the victim badly hurt? If it's minor, we can settle with an apology and money. But the police must take him for a statement and he might be detained. Don't panic, I will call a lawyer and get Yunzhou out immediately. I won't let him suffer. My mother grabbed her arm, sobbing. No, Shinran, Yunzhou is too fragile. The detention center is freezing and dirty. He can't survive there. My father suddenly looked at me as I lay silently in my hospital bed. After a brief hesitation, he blurted out, Zhiyan is stronger than Yunzhou. Why doesn't Zhiyan take the blame for him just for a few days until Shinran sorts this out? And then we will bring him home. Even Su Shinran was shocked, staring at my father. Uncle Zhiyan just had surgery. He was severely injured, but Yunzhou saw this as his lifeline. He lunged at Shinran, grabbing her sleeve, begging desperately, Shinran, please, I am so scared. My brother won't mind, right? Brother, help me just this once. Seeing Yunzhou so helpless and then looking at me lying in bed with closed eyes, Shinran was torn inside. Just then a knock rattled the door. 2 uniformed police officers walked in, showed their badges, and said, Who is Shen Yunzhou? Please come with us to assist with the investigation. Yunzhou panicked, clinging to Shinran, while my parents frantically begged the officers. Under Yunzhou's desperate gaze and my parents' tearful pleading, Su Shinran finally nodded. She turned to the police and pointed a trembling finger at me. He is Shen Yunzhou. Throughout the entire ordeal, I did not say a word, nor did I open my eyes. Only when an officer politely but firmly asked me to stand up did I open my eyes. I looked past my parents, who avoided my gaze, and past Shinran's conflicted eyes, finally stopping on Yunzhou's relieved face. I felt no anger, no hatred, no self-pity. Just a dead, heavy silence. I pulled the IV needle from the back of my hand, sat up, and got out of bed. My terrifying calm made Shinran feel as if an invisible hand was crushing her heart, choking her. As I passed her, she suddenly lunged, grabbing my arm. Zhiyan, wait for me, she sobbed. 3 days at most, and I will get you out. I will take you anywhere, do anything you want, and compensate you however you wish. I stopped, looked at her tight grip, and slowly pried her fingers off. I did not say a single word. I turned and followed the police. Behind me, my parents stammered, Zhiyan, we had no choice. We will make it up to you. I did not pause as if they did not exist. Shinran stood frozen, her empty hand trembling in the air. My 3 days in the detention center felt like an eternity. I barely slept, but I stayed quiet. No crying, no arguing, no talking. I just sat in my dark corner, staring up at the tiny barred window. On the 3rd afternoon, I was finally released. Stepping through the heavy iron gates, the sunlight blinded me. I squinted to adjust, then turned on my phone. 2 text messages popped up. The first was from my mother, Zhiyan, your father, and I must attend a charity gala, so we can't pick you up. Take a cab home. I will cook something nice for you later. The second was from Shinran Zhiyan. There is an urgent cross-border merger meeting, and I cannot leave. Go home and rest first. I will see you tonight. I will go anywhere you want after this. Wait for me. I read them blankly, then opened my social feed. The top post was from Yunzhou, uploaded 10 minutes ago. Just a tiny cold, but they treat it like an emergency. Grateful for everyone who loves me. In the photo, my parents and Shinran smiled by his side. Staring at it, I let out a soft laugh. As I laughed, cold tears rolled down, not from pain, but peace. A sense of absolute relief, as if the dust had finally settled. Then my phone buzzed with an email from my immigration agent, Mr. Shen. Congratulations, your permanent residency has been officially approved. Wishing you a wonderful new life in your new country. I stared at those words for a long time, then slowly exhaled. It was finally over. I took a taxi back to the family villa. It was dead silent. I walked into my tiny bedroom, took out 2 documents, and placed them neatly on the coffee table. Right in the center of the living room, I placed a declaration to sever our family ties and an agreement to end my engagement. Both bore my signature, Shen Zhiyan. I cast one last look at this luxurious, freezing house that had never offered me warmth. Then I grabbed my suitcase and walked out without a trace of regret. Under the cover of night, a cab took me to the airport. Sitting by the terminal window, my finger hovered over my pinned chats with my parents and Shinran. I paused for a few seconds, grabbed my suitcase, and headed to the boarding gate, never looking back. Meanwhile, after nursing, Yunzhou Su Shinran rushed to her office. By 11 p.m., her grueling meeting finally ended. Walking out, she habitually checked her phone. The screen was completely blank, no messages from me. She got into her car, and when the driver asked for the destination, she changed her mind. To the Shen Villa. As the city lights blurred past, she leaned back, closing her tired eyes. The car pulled up to the dark villa. Only the porch light cast a faint glow. Shinran rang the bell, but silence met her. A sudden wave of panic washed over her. She punched in the code and pushed the front door open. Only a single floor lamp lit the dim living room. 3 figures sat silently on the sofa, my parents and Yunju. An oppressive silence hung in the air. Shinran walked inside, her eyes immediately locking onto the 2 documents sitting neatly on the coffee table. Her steps faltered as a suffocating dread gripped her heart. Rushing forward, she grabbed the files. The bold, dark titles seemed to pierce her eyes in the dim light. Declaration of Severing. Parent-child relations and agreement to end engagement. At the bottom was my sharp, decisive signature. Beside them lay the Su family heirloom ring. Shinran stared at it, her fingertips beginning to tremble uncontrollably. She whipped her head up, her voice raw. "What is this?" "Where is Zhiyan?" startled. My mother looked up with tear-filled eyes. "We found this when we got home tonight," she sobbed. "His phone is off and his room is completely empty." My father rubbed his face, his voice cracking. "His passport ID and belongings are all gone," Yunjo whispered. "Is my brother still mad? It is all my fault." "Shut up." Shinran snapped her icy tone, making Yunjo shrink back in fear. My parents stared in shock as Shinran gasped for air. Those thin papers now felt heavier than lead, crushing her chest. Dropping the files, she grabbed her phone and dialed the number she knew by heart, only to hear a cold, robotic voice. "The number you have dialed is currently switched off." She whirled on my parents. "When did he leave? When did you last speak to him?" Trembling, my mother handed over her phone. "This message. We lied to him about the charity dinner and told him to take a cab." Staring at the screen, Shinran felt as if her heart was shattered. Her text and my mother's message had been sent only minutes apart, both discarding me in an instant. Just as I had emerged from the detention center, battered and broken, they had all chosen to abandon me to coddle a perfectly healthy Yunju. Shinran let out a hollow laugh, thick with panic and self-derision. My father stammered, trying to find an excuse. I thought he was just throwing a fit. He always calms down after a few days, but Zinran remembered my eerily calm face in the hospital, the icy coldness as I pried her hand away, and my absolute silence as I walked off with the police. That was not a tantrum. That was a dead heart. Paralyzed by dread, she ignored everyone and bolted upstairs, throwing my bedroom door open. The room was completely empty. Her eyes scanned the bare walls, landing on the trash can in the corner. Inside lay a few torn pieces of photo paper. She knelt and pieced them together, revealing our only photo. Her fingers turned white, the sharp edges cutting into her skin. Stumbling toward my nightstand, she desperately pulled open the drawer. Only a few books remained. She flipped through them, finding nothing. Refusing to yield, she opened the bottom drawer. An old metal box lay inside. Her heart skipped a beat as she pulled it out, her fingers trembling violently. Inside was a piece of paper, crumpled, and then smoothed out with desperate care. She picked it up and her blood turned to ice. It was an ultrasound report under her name diagnosing her with an early pregnancy. At 6 weeks. Below it lay the doctor's signature for an abortion. The paper was warped with dark, dried tear stains smudging the ink. She could barely hold it. I had never been indifferent. I had just buried all my agonizing pain right here. At the bottom lay a thick, leather-bound journal. Taking a deep breath, she opened it. The early pages were from when I first returned to the family, filled with anxiety, a desperate longing for my parents' affection, and my unspoken hidden love for her. But the further she read, the messier the handwriting grew, heavy with despair. They told me to yield to Yunjo. Seeing how Shinran looked at me, I knew I had lost. She is pregnant, but she aborted our baby just to spare Yunjo's feelings. What about our child? My father offered $50,000 for every blow. Shinran, you are heartless. Taking the fall for Yunjo ends everything. On the final page, dated today, a single line was written with crushing force. I can finally leave. Goodbye, parents. Goodbye, Shinran. Let's never meet again. A hot tear splashed onto the journal, smudging my ink. Shinran touched her cold, wet cheeks in a daze. Yunjo had sneaked in behind her, standing by the door, watching her trembling shoulders and the diary in her hands. A flash of deep hatred crossed his eyes. He quickly masked his resentment with a pitiful, innocent look. Shinran, my brother, is probably just in a bad mood. He probably went out to clear his head and will be back in a few days. Hearing this, Shinran. She whipped her head around, eyes bloodshot, and said coldly, "To clear his mind with a breakup letter, I am asking you about the accident and your injuries." Shen Yunjo speak with a clear conscience. Did you really not tell a single lie? His face turned paper pale, and he instinctively backed away. He retreated, stammering, "Sister Shinran, do you doubt me? Do you not believe me either?" Hearing the noise, mother, Shen rushed in and shielded him, glaring at Su Shinran. "Shinran, how can you speak to him like that? Zhiyan chose to leave on his own. What does that have to do with Yunzhou? He is too sensitive. Who else can we blame?" Su Shinran looked at the mother and son clinging to each other, then at Father Shen at the door, hesitating before looking away. It was so absurd. What kind of sick, elaborate lie had she been living in for the past 5 years? What had she done to the man who truly loved her, who waited 5 years only for her to drag him into hell? She pointed at the door, shouting coldly, "Get out! All of you! Get out, mother!" Shen was terrified by the raw fury in her eyes. She tried to speak, but Father Shen pulled her back. Giving her a complicated look, Father Shen sighed and dragged Shen Yunzhou and his protesting wife out. As the door shut, Su Shinran collapsed onto the cold floor. Suddenly remembering something, she frantically grabbed her phone and dialed a number. "It is me, Su Shinran. I need you to pull some footage from the Jingshan Villa area and the entire route from the detention center to the Shen residence this afternoon. Do it right now." She paced back and forth in the empty room, gripped by a terrifying panic she had never felt before as she waited for the surveillance results. Every single second felt like agonizing torture. Finally, at 2 a.m., her phone rang. "Miss Su, we found him. Around 5 p.m. today, Mr. Shen left the villa alone with a suitcase. He stood at the entrance for about 3 minutes, looked back once, and then got into a cab." Su Shinran frantically demanded his destination. "The international airport," the voice replied. "A flight to Canada." Her mind went completely blank. Grabbing her car keys, she bolted outside. She sped all the way to the airport, rushed to the service desk, flashed her ID, and demanded the passenger lists for tonight's outbound flights. The duty manager, terrified by her bloodshot eyes and fierce aura, did not dare delay. They immediately started checking. "Miss Su, there was only one flight to Canada last night. It took off at 9:40 p.m. direct to Toronto. There is indeed a passenger on the list named Shen Zhiyan." Su Shinran closed her eyes, fighting back her panic. "I need his details, his address in Canada, his contact information." After exhausting her resources, pulling strings, and making threats, she finally secured an address and a phone number at 4 a.m. The number was a temporary Canadian line, and calling it only revealed it was already disconnected. Su Shinran stared at the address, her heart freezing over. With shaking hands, she booked the very next flight to Toronto. Dawn was breaking as she stepped out of the airport. She drove straight back to the Shen family villa. The living room lights were still on. Shen's parents sat on the sofa, staring at each other in silence. Seeing her walk in, Mother Shen sprang up immediately, asking desperately, "Shinran, how is it? Did you find Zhiyan? Tell me, did you find him?" Su Shinran's voice was terribly hoarse. "He went to Toronto, Canada. I am flying out tomorrow at noon to find him." Mother Shen froze, a sudden realization hitting her. "Canada. But he is still injured. He just had surgery. Going all that way alone. What if he does something reckless?" "No, he won't," Su Shinran snapped, trying to convince herself as much as Mother Shen. "He wouldn't. I will find him." Father Shen covered his face in agony, sobbing, "We are the ones who drove him away." Su Shinran stared at the couple, finding no sympathy for them in her heart. She turned and left the Shen house, driving straight to her office instead of going home. She called her assistant. "What is my schedule for tomorrow?" "At 10 a.m. there is the purchasing meeting with He Gaosheng," the assistant replied. "At 2 p.m. the city project negotiations." In the evening, Su Shinran cut them off. "Cancel everything." The assistant was dumbfounded, but Su Shinran repeated slowly and clearly, "I said cancel it all. Clear my schedule for the next 6 months. All meetings, negotiations, and dinners, cancel them or hand them to the vice president. Unless the company is literally going bankrupt, do not bother me." The assistant was left speechless on the other end. Su Shinran took a deep breath. "And one more thing. Do not ever report any matters regarding Shen Yunzhou or the Shen family to me again." She hung up and tossed the phone aside, watching the sky outside gradually brighten. She watched the city wake up, bustling with traffic as if nothing had changed. But her own world had shattered into ruins the moment she opened the Shen family door last night and saw those 2 documents on the coffee table. Staring into the empty air, she began to whisper, "Zhiyan, wait for me. This time I will be the one waiting. No matter where you are, no matter how long it takes or what it costs, I will find you." After a 12-hour flight, her plane finally landed at Toronto Pearson International Airport. It was dusk when she arrived. Ignoring her jet lag, Su Shinran hailed a cab and headed straight to the youth hostel. Located on a worn-out aging street, she pushed open the door to find a lobby filled with young backpackers chatting loudly in various languages. Behind the desk, an elderly Chinese woman with gray hair sat reading a newspaper. Su Xinran hurried over and asked, anxiously in English, "Hello, I am looking for a guest named Shen Zhiyan. A Chinese man checked in about a week ago." The old lady looked up and scrutinized her. The old lady thought for a moment before shaking her head. Mr. Shen only stayed for one night and checked out early the next morning. Su Xinran's heart sank. Did he say where he was going? Did he leave a number? Setting her paper down, the woman asked in accented Mandarin, "Who are you to him?" Stunned, Su Xinran instinctively replied, "I am his fiancée." A mocking smile touched the old lady's lips as she sized her up. "Fiancée, I was on duty the night he arrived. He could barely even walk straight, clutching his forehead and coughing constantly. I asked if he was feeling sick and if he wanted a doctor. He shook his head, saying he was just tired." The old lady paused, her gaze turning cold. "Then in the middle of the night I heard crying. I went to check and found him crouching alone in the hallway corner, sobbing and shaking all over. I poured him some hot water, but his hands were ice cold. He could not even say, 'Thank you,' he just wept." Su Xinran froze. Every word felt like a jagged, ice-cold blade stabbing straight into her heart. "What happened to him after that?" she asked with trembling lips. "The next morning, before dawn, he dragged his suitcase and left," the old lady said flatly. She looked at Su Xinran with a helpless sigh. "Young lady, I can tell you are well off, but that boy had no light left in his eyes. He was completely, utterly broken. If you really care, let him go. Give him a chance to live and free yourself." Standing outside the dark hostel on a foreign street, a wave of absolute terror washed over Su Xinran. Forcing herself to stay calm, she began leveraging every single contact she had in Canada. She hired the finest private investigators and even used extreme measures to try and hack into local medical and social security databases. But he was like a single drop of water lost in a vast ocean. He had clearly planned this, systematically cutting off every possible clue. Just as she was drowning in despair, Shen Yunzhou called. He softened his voice, asking tentatively, "Sister Xinran, when are you coming home? Mom, Dad, and I are lost without you. They have been so distracted lately, constantly mentioning my brother. Are you thinking about him too?" His artificial pleading tone only filled her with intense disgust. "I am busy," she replied coldly. But Shen Yunzhou either did not hear the extreme irritation in her voice or simply chose to ignore it as he continued to chatter on. "Sister Xinran, are you searching for my brother? Honestly, since he chose to leave, you should just let him go. He never belonged to our world anyway. Returning to his old life might actually be better for him." Su Xinran cut him off fiercely. "Shen Yunzhou." The line went dead silent. Su Xinran gripped her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Every word was spat through gritted teeth. "He is my fiancé. Where he belongs is not for an outsider like you to judge. And watch your mouth. What do you mean, his old life? What do you mean he does not belong to our world? Never forget that you are the fake heir here?" Shen Yunzhou gasped, stunned into silence for several seconds. "Sister Xinran, how can you speak to me like that? I am Yunzhou, too exhausted to listen." She hung up. Staring at the foreign city lights, a dull ache throbbed in her chest. "Jian, where are you?" she whispered. A week later, the private investigator finally uncovered a tiny lead. A month before fleeing the country, he had already secretly obtained his Canadian permanent residency. Just days ago, a newly opened Canadian bank account under his name registered a transaction at a community hospital in Quebec. Like a drowning woman desperately clutching at a final lifeline, Su Xinran immediately booked the earliest flight to Quebec City that very night. She arrived in Quebec in the dead of night. The old French-speaking city felt silent and completely foreign. Locating the community hospital, she explained her situation to the receptionist, desperately wanting to look up the medical records of a Chinese man named Shen Zhiyan. The nurse politely but firmly refused, citing patient confidentiality. Refusing to back down, Su Xinran offered to pay any amount of money or speak directly with the hospital management. Still, the nurse shook her head, her stance completely unyielding. Unable to make headway, Su Xinran refused to leave. She sat in a cafe across the street, keeping vigil for 3 straight days. Her eyes tracked every single person entering and leaving. She could not miss a single detail. On the 3rd afternoon, she spotted a familiar-looking nurse. As the nurse walked out the side door, Su Xinran intercepted her. Speaking rapidly in English, she showed the woman a photo of him on her phone. "Pardon me, but have you seen this man recently?" The nurse paused, looking at the screen. She looked at the picture, then at Su Xinran's frantic expression. After a brief hesitation, she whispered in accented English, "Yes, a Mr. Shen came for a follow-up about a week ago." Su Xinran's heart leaped, her throat tightening. Follow-up. What was wrong with him? "He is not doing well. A post-op infection caused severe inflammation. and his old fractured ribs have not healed. He also has visible bruises. He came completely alone, looking incredibly thin and pale. Every single word felt like a heavy hammer striking her chest. Su Shenran asked with a shaking voice, "Where is he now? Do you know where he is staying?" The nurse shook her head. "I am not sure, but he asked me how to get to Montreal and inquired about train schedules. He might have headed there." Su Shenran was on the verge of weeping with tears of joy. Thanking her repeatedly, she pulled out her wallet and stuffed every single dollar of cash into the nurse's hands. Startled, the nurse immediately tried to push the money back. But Su Shenran had already turned and dashed to the curb to hail a cab. Just as she climbed inside and was about to tell the driver to head to the train station, her phone rang. It was her assistant, sounding grave. "President Su, there is a situation I need to report." Shen Yunzhou posted a long statement on his social media at noon today. A terrible premonition flashed through Su Shenran's mind. "What does it say?" The assistant hesitated. He wrote very vaguely, but the whole post strongly implies that the eldest young master, driven by jealousy of him, frame-ups upon frame-ups. He even resorted to self-harm to set him up, claiming the eldest Shen son heartlessly abandoned his parents to go abroad unfilial, leaving the elders in constant tears. Now public opinion is boiling. Everyone is cursing Mr. Shen. Su Shenran's face darkened instantly, looking furious. She hung up and immediately logged into domestic social platforms. Shen Yunzhou's carefully crafted essay was hanging at the tail end of the hot searches. The comment section was a total mess. "Oh my God, I never expected the real Shen heir to be so vicious. So malicious, I feel so bad for poor Yunzhou. Bullied like this and still so kind. Cruel to his own parents, he does not deserve to be a son. Shen Zhiyan, get out of the Shen family." Su Shenran stared at the toxic comments, her anger bursting out of her chest. How dare Shen Yunzhou? She dialed his number back directly. The phone rang for a long time before it was finally picked up. Shen Yunzhou's voice came through, sounding aggrieved. Sister Shinran Su Shenran cut him off, speaking with an icy coldness. "Delete it." Shen Yunzhou paused for a few seconds before saying in disbelief, "Sister Shinran, you want me to delete it. But I only spoke the truth, my brother." Su Shenran sneered. The truth? What truth is it, you crashing into his car on purpose, or hurting yourself to frame him? Or was it you begging him to take the blame, Shen Yunzhou? Do you want me to package the full surveillance footage of the crash, along with the bank transfer records of the witnesses you hired, and send them to the media? Let everyone see the real truth. A dead silence fell over the line, with only Shen Yunzhou's heavy, ragged breathing audible. His voice shook. How do you... Su Shenran's voice was terrifyingly calm, carrying a suffocating pressure. "How do I know, Shen Yunzhou? I was just too lazy to investigate before, not stupid. The anomaly is on that road. Your medical evaluation reports, do you need me to lay them out before you one by one?" Shen Yunzhou finally panicked. "Sister Shinran, no. Listen to me. It's because I love you so much. I just wanted you to notice me. I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Please don't." Su Shenran cut him off, her voice filled with ridicule and disgust. "Love me. Do you love me or my husband's position? You know the truth, Shen Yunzhou. It was only after Zhiyan left, leaving me in agonizing pain, that I realized I had mistaken childhood friendship for love. But now even that friendship makes me feel disgusted." She paused, enunciating every word clearly. "This is the last time I am warning you. Delete that garbage right now and publicly apologize to Zhiyan to clarify all untrue rumors. Otherwise, I will not hesitate to use the full weight of the Su family's power to put you and your accomplices where you belong, to reflect on your actions." She hung up cleanly, giving Shen Yunzhou no chance to argue. She then immediately called her assistant, ordering coldly, "First, use the fastest speed to suppress Shen Yunzhou's post and block all related search terms. Second, issue a formal statement under the dual names of the Su Group and myself, Su Shenran." Half an hour later, a sternly worded, officially sealed statement was released simultaneously by the Su Group's official account and Su Shenran's personal account, quickly taking the internet by storm. The statement clearly declared Ms. Su Shenran solemnly states that all untrue rumors and malicious speculation currently circulating online targeting Mr. Shen Zhiyan are entirely fabricated by those with ulterior motives. The Su Group's legal department and my attorney team have gathered full evidence and will sue those responsible. We will show no leniency. The statement caused an uproar. Netizens who were just cursing me were instantly dumbfounded. At this moment, Su Shenran had no time to focus on the domestic storm. On a train to Montreal, she received an overseas call from my father. His voice sounded old and weary. "Shenran, we saw what Yunzhou posted, and your statement too. Is he really lying about everything?" Su Shinran cut him off, speaking with absolute certainty. Uncle Zhiyan has never hurt him. Not once. He never did anything of the sort. Shen Yunzhou staged this entire drama from start to finish. He lied to all of us, and we were all fooled by him, blinded by our own favoritism. On the other end, my mother's uncontrollable sobbing and my father's heavy breathing could be heard. My mother wept. Then what we did to Jian, locking him up, forcing him to take the blame, how heartbroken he must have been. We are monsters. Shinran, you must find Jian. Tell him his parents know they were wrong. We were foolish, we failed him. Tell him to come home. We will make it up to him, we will love him twice as much. Su Shinran forced a bitter smile that looked worse than weeping. Go home. She stared at the autumn scenery flying past the train window, her voice as soft as a sigh. Uncle Antieto, you really think he still has a home? The crying stopped instantly, leaving only a suffocating silence. Finally, my father's cracked voice came through, filled with endless regret. We are the ones who destroyed his home. Hanging up, Su Shinran leaned against the freezing glass and closed her eyes. Jian, did you hear them? They regret it. But it is too late, isn't it? I regret it too. I regret not seeing my own heart sooner, not standing by your side when you needed me and pushing you away over and over. But is there still time? Autumn had arrived in Montreal, dry leaves littering the streets. Su Shinran began an even longer, more hopeless search. Since there are fewer Chinese people in the French district, finding someone was incredibly difficult. She ran through almost every Chinese community restaurant, grocery store, and language school. Clutching my photo, she asked over and over in broken French, mixed with English, "Excuse me, have you seen this man?" But most of the answers she received were polite shakes of the head. A month passed. She had walked almost every street in Montreal, growing visibly thinner. Deeply worried, my parents flew over once. The three of them searched like headless flies for a while, but still found nothing. The two elders looked increasingly haggard until the last spark of hope in their eyes died. They returned home carrying endless regret and disappointment. After the final cold wave of late autumn, Montreal's first snow fell. Su Shinran stood in the plaza outside Notre Dame Basilica, gazing at the famous fountain. Just then a tall figure in a red scarf caught her eye. He stood by the fountain with his back to her, leaning over slightly to feed the pigeons. At that exact moment, Su Shinran's heart nearly stopped beating. She shoved through the crowd and ran toward him, screaming his name. The figure by the fountain turned, slowly revealing a completely unfamiliar Asian face with a surprised expression. It was not me. Su Shinran froze in her tracks, stumbling and nearly falling. Her sudden spark of hope was instantly shattered. This devastating plunge from heaven to hell completely broke her. Frightened by her crazed, desolate appearance, the man hurried away. Su Shinran stood frozen as snow fell onto her stiff body, which she could no longer feel. She could not find me anymore. She had truly lost me. This realization, along with Montreal's freezing winter wind, pierced into every corner of her body. That night, Su Shinran walked into a quiet, inconspicuous street bar, ordered the strongest whiskey, and downed glass after glass. The alcohol burned her throat, but could not warm her cold, despairing heart. Su Shinran slumped over the bar, laughing softly, while tears flowed uncontrollably. She murmured to herself, "What on earth did I do to him?" Just then the phone in her pocket vibrated. After a long pause, she sluggishly pulled it out. It was her assistant, whose voice carried uncontrollable excitement. "President Su, we found it. We tracked down Mr. Shen's social security number. He has active records in Montreal." Su Shinran bolted upright instantly, sober as the assistant continued. In Old Montreal, he had a 3-day part-time job at a Chinese supermarket. But that was 2 weeks ago. The owner said he quit because his health couldn't take it. He mentioned that when Mr. Shen left, he asked where to find a reliable French class, wanting to learn French to make finding a job easier. We followed the trail and found he registered at the Alliance Française, paying for 1 term. Classes start next week. Su Shinran jumped up, shouting excitedly. "The address. Send me the address." After hanging up, Su Shinran stared at the address sent by her assistant. The unfamiliar French street name felt like the most beautiful melody. She threw down some cash and rushed out of the bar. "Jian, I will definitely find you this time." Su Shinran had already been standing outside the French training school waiting for a full hour. At 5 o'clock sharp, the doors finally opened. Su Shinran's heart leaped into her throat, her eyes scanning the exiting crowd with desperate urgency. And then she saw me. I was walking at the very back, wearing the simplest black down jacket and an old gray scarf, making my complexion look even paler. My head was slightly lowered as I chatted in quiet French, with a blonde girl beside me giving a faint, gentle smile. That smile was like a tiny needle stabbing Su Shinran's heart without warning, making her breath hitch in sharp pain. 5 years ago, I used to smile at her like that. Later, those smiles grew rarer and fainter until only fatigue and lifeless silence remained. She parted her lips, but her throat felt blocked and she couldn't make any sound. I bid farewell to my classmate, and the moment I turned around, I froze. Our eyes locked. I looked at her as if she were a total stranger. Su Shenran's heart plunged, sinking into an icy abyss. She finally found her voice crying out hoarsely, "Jian." Her body rushed forward uncontrollably, blocking me in just a few steps. I stopped and looked up at her. "Is something the matter, ma'am?" Those words were like white, hot knives plunging into Su Shenran's heart, the intense pain making her vision go dark, making her stumble. Her voice shook as she spoke, "Jian, I've looked for you for so long. Come home with me, please." I looked at her quietly. Home. Where is my home? Su Shenran stepped forward, eagerly stammering. "Back to our home. I was wrong. Jian, I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that or let you suffer so much. Let's go home, please. I will treat you well from now on. Only you I will never." She couldn't go on because I took a step back, dodging her reaching hand. I spoke again, my tone still freezing cold. "Miss Su, please respect yourself." Su Shenran's eyes reddened instantly. "Don't call me that, Jian. Look at me. I am Su Shenran. Look at me." Frantically, she pulled the annulment agreement from her coat pocket, her voice rising with a stubborn, frantic edge. "I won't sign this." "See, I didn't sign it." "As long as we haven't canceled our engagement, you are still my fiancée," I interrupted her. "Unilateral termination doesn't require your consent. My lawyer has handled the paperwork. Miss Su, legally, we have no connection anymore." Su Shenran was almost shouting. "Jian, give me a chance. Just once I will spend my life making it up to you." I suddenly smiled, my lips curving with cold mockery. I looked at her and asked clearly, "Su Shenran, do you remember? You used to chase Shen Yunzhou the exact same way, waiting under his dorm all night, sending 99 roses telling him to give you a chance to care for him. Why are the tricks you used on Shen Yunzhou now being used on me? Too bad I don't buy it." My words were like a rusty blunt knife, slowly slicing open her bleeding heart. Su Shenran opened her mouth but couldn't make a sound. She wanted to argue, to say it wasn't like that, but those deliberately forgotten memories rushed back with total clarity. Now hearing those same words from my mouth was the sharpest irony. I pulled back, that bit of a cold smile crossed my face, and my eyes went completely dead. "Su Shenran, I don't love you anymore." I paused, then added, "To be exact, I've lost the ability to love. You took that from me." Crushing it bit by bit, I tapped my chest. My voice was soft, yet it hit her like a sledgehammer. "It's dead. It died when you aborted our child, when you had men beat me with clubs, and when you threw me in jail to take the fall for your precious Shen Yunzhou. It died then." Every word conjured a painful memory, a scar that would never heal. "So stop wasting your breath. Go back to him. You two deserve each other." Without another look, I walked right past her. As I walked away, Su Shenran snapped out of her sheer panic and despair. "No." She rushed forward, locking her arms around me from behind. Burying her wet face in my back, she sobbed, "I won't leave. Without you, I have nothing." I struggled, trying to pry her hands off. "Let go." She gripped me even tighter, rambling incoherently. "I won't. If I let go, you'll vanish forever. Jian, I'm so sorry. Beat me, hate me, kill me. Just don't leave me." I stopped struggling, my voice turning cold enough to freeze water. "Su Shenran, you're pathetic." Her body shuddered and her grip loosened for a split second. Seizing the moment, I firmly pried her fingers open. "Stop following me or I'll call the police." I didn't spare her another glance as I walked away. I hurried toward an old car parked nearby. The driver's door opened and a gentle, pretty young woman stepped out. She looked at me with concern and asked in Chinese, "Are you okay?" "Who was that?" Shaking my head, I opened the door and got in. "It's fine. Just an irrelevant person. Let's go." She glanced at Su Shenran standing frozen in the snow, then started the engine without another word. We sped off, splashing cold slush all over Su Shenran, who stood there absolutely motionless. She looked like a discarded statue frozen in the snow, but she didn't give up. Like a persistent ghost, she began silently invading my new life in Montreal. Her private detective was fast, quickly tracking down my address in an old apartment building. She didn't dare come up to my third-floor apartment, terrified I'd call the cops, or look at her with utter disgust. Instead, she lurked in a quiet corner across the street. She watched me head to the subway at 7 a.m., shivering in my down jacket. She saw me buy cheap toast and milk at the corner store. When a stray cat wandered over, I squatted down to feed it a piece of bread. Watching it eat, a faint, fleeting smile touched my lips. Su Shenran stared greedily at that smile from afar. Her heart squeezed with raw pain. How long had it been since she last saw me smile? She also noticed the woman who drove me. Sometimes she'd drop me off. Other times we walked back together, talking outside as she listened to me with a warm smile. Her eyes were incredibly gentle. Su Shenran recognized that look it was how a woman looks at the man she loves. Jealousy devoured her like a poisonous snake. She later discovered the woman was Xia Yue, a Chinese tutor at my French language school. She took good care of me. I also worked part-time at a cafe. Su Shenran tracked it down, sitting in the corner for hours every afternoon sipping expensive coffee. Wearing my server apron, I kept busy wiping tables and taking orders, ignoring her. When customers flirted or caused trouble, I always brushed it off with a polite, distant smile, but one day, a drunk woman started screaming at me. The manager rushed over, but instead of defending me, he scolded me for offending the guest. Su Shenran snapped on the spot. She marched over, grabbed the drunk woman's wrist, and flung her away. Glaring at the manager, she said coldly, "I'm buying this shop. Now get out of my sight." Terrified by her fierce tone, the manager shrunk back. I didn't even look at her as I walked into the kitchen. She chased after me, blocking the narrow hallway. "Zhiyan, don't overwork yourself here." "Those people," I cut her off, my voice flat. "Su Shenran, stay out of my life." She panicked. I didn't mean to interfere. I just don't want you to suffer." I looked up, my eyes completely empty of emotion. "Wasn't all my suffering caused by you? Why play the hero now?" My words froze her in place, her face pale. I added mockingly, "Save your grand gestures. You bought the cafe. What's next?" "The language school." "My apartment." "Su Shenran, your money and power are absolutely worthless to me." I walked past her to get back to work. The next day when she returned, I was gone. The manager told her I had quit. Standing in that empty cafe, she felt a profound sense of helplessness for the first time. She could only go back to stalking me from a distance. But then one afternoon, things took a turn. She watched me wiping down tables when my body suddenly swayed. I gripped the edge, unable to move. She couldn't bear it anymore, rushing over to support me. My arm was burning. I had a high fever, and my forehead felt scorching hot. "Zhiyan, you have a terrible fever. I'm taking you to the hospital," she said anxiously. I pushed her away, telling her to leave me alone. But for once, she was unyielding, dragging me out and telling the stunned manager, "He quits." She shoved me into the car and sped to the hospital. The doctor frowned after checking me. A high fever of 39.5, recurring infection, malnutrition, anemia, and mild pneumonia. He needs to be hospitalized immediately. Her heart sank as she filed the paperwork. She sat by my bed staring at my pale, fragile face while I slept, wishing she could punch herself. When I woke up, the sky was already dark. Blinking against the light, I saw Su Shenran sitting there, looking exhausted, with deep, dark circles. Our eyes met, but I quickly looked away toward the ceiling. "Leave." Her eyes welled with tears. She grabbed my hand on the blanket and sobbed, "I won't leave, Zhiyan. Hate me, but I can't watch you suffer all alone out here." I tried to pull my hand back, but she held on too tightly. I gave up, my voice cold as ice. "My life has nothing to do with you." She stared at me intensely. "Yes, it does. Zhiyan, my entire life is bound to yours." Tired, I closed my eyes, refusing to speak or look at her. She could only hold my hand in silence. The heavy tension broke when Xia Yue walked in with a bouquet of bright sunflowers. Seeing Su Shenran, she paused, and Su Shenran instantly went on defense, glaring sharply at the doorway. Xia Yue frowned. "Who are you?" Su Shenran stood up, her voice icy. "I'm his fiancée." Xia Yue actually smiled at that. "Fiancé Zhiyan told me he is completely single. No girlfriend, and definitely certainly no fiancé." Su Shenran's face fell, but before she could snap, my weak but clear voice sounded from the bed. "Yue, you're here. Come in." She nodded, walking right past Su Shenran to place the flowers in a vase. "How are you feeling?" "What did the doctor say?" she asked gently. My voice softened. "Much better, just my usual fever." "Good," she smiled. "I brought you some warm porridge. Try to eat a little." A natural warmth immediately filled the room. We shared an easy familiarity, leaving Su Shenran looking like a complete outsider. She wanted to step closer, but I spoke up, my voice flat yet undeniable. "Please, leave." Her feet froze as she watched Xia Yue gently help me sit up. "Please leave." My tone left no room for argument. She could only watch from the doorway as Xia Yue fluffed my pillows, scooped up some porridge, blew on it gently, and fed it to me. And I didn't pull away. Standing outside, she listened to the sound of Xia Yue's gentle laughter. During my recovery, Su Shenran barely left. She had never cared for anyone, yet she did it now with clumsy dedication, waking instantly at night to help me drink water. I never responded to her clumsy care, acting like a lifeless doll. I remained completely detached, no refusal, no acceptance, no words. I ate what she gave me and let her do what she wanted, but my eyes were empty, looking right through her. This blank emptiness terrified her far more than outright hatred. Then one day, Shen Yunzhou's name lit up the phone on my nightstand. Su Shenran glanced at me as I rested with my eyes closed, grabbed the phone, and hurried outside. She answered outside, and his hysterical voice spilled out, "Shenran, save me! My parents kicked me out of the house. They abandoned me. My depression's back, and I want to die. Where are you? Please come back. I can't go on." In the past, she might have softened at his tears, but now hearing that voice only filled her with disgust and irritation. She said coldly, "Shen Yunzhou, if you want to die, do it far away from me. Don't ruin my day." The voice on the other end cut off, leaving only heavy, shocked breathing. He screamed, "Shenran, how could you speak to me like that?" Su Shenran cut him off her words, slow, deliberate, and razor-sharp. "Listen closely, Shen Yunzhou. First, we both know whether your depression is real. Do I need to send you the doctor's recordings to refresh your memory? Second, never call me again, and never bother Zhiyan, or I will have you thrown in prison to reflect on your actions. Watch yourself." She hung up and blocked his number, but as she turned to head back inside, she froze. The ward door was slightly open, and I was sitting up, watching her in silence. Her chest tightened with sudden panic, and she hurried inside. "Zhiyan, I calmly cut her off. "Save it." Turning my gaze back to the window, I left her standing there, defeated, her excuses dying in her throat. She watched me slip back into my silent, detached shell, her heart heavy. It was true none of it mattered. Whether she woke up or not, it meant nothing to me. I wanted no guilt, no compensation, and definitely none of her love. When I was discharged, Su Shenran insisted on driving me back. I didn't object. I simply didn't care. As we parked, she rushed to open my door, but I stepped out on my own just as the streetlights began to flicker on. Suddenly, a man in a black mask and cap lunged out of nowhere, a gleaming blade aimed straight at my chest. It happened so fast I couldn't even react. But Su Shenran gasped, screaming, "Watch out!" Her body moved faster than her mind. She threw herself in front of me, taking the blade directly in her back. The sickening sound of tearing flesh was dull and clear. Su Shenran shuddered violently, let out a low groan, and collapsed. The thug tried to strike again, but some passing guys tackled him to the ground. Su Shenran gasped as warm blood soaked through her clothes. She looked up at me, her voice trembling in agony. But her voice carried an unbelievable sense of relief. "Zhiyan, are you okay?" The heavy smell of blood filled my nose. I looked down at her pale, sweat-slicked face. Her eyes were incredibly bright, filled with a terrifying mix of fear and relief. Fear of losing me. I saw my own stunned face reflected in her eyes. Before that spark faded under my cold gaze, I pushed her away none too gently. She stumbled, barely holding herself up as her back wound, tore further. She gasped in pain as more blood poured out. I pulled out my phone and called emergency services. After looking expressionlessly at the pinned attacker, I walked back to her side. She was slowly sliding down against the car door. The blood loss was making her vision fade, but she fought to keep her eyes on me. She reached out, trying to grab the edge of my coat, but her hand fell limply. In a weak, cracking voice, she called my name. I stared down at her, my lips parting, but I said nothing. Even as they loaded her onto the stretcher, she kept her eyes locked on me until she blacked out. Now, under the red surgery light, I sat silently on the bench. My mind was blank, staring at the white wall. Hurried footsteps echoed down the hall as my parents rushed in, panic written all over their faces. My mother spotted me, threw herself forward, and burst into tears. "My son, are you okay? You scared me to death." My father tried to hug me, but I stepped aside. Looking at them calmly, I said, "I am fine. Su Shenran is the one in surgery." My father's face crumbled with tears. Gianni trembled. "I know we wronged you. We were wrong. Come home with us. We will make it up to you, we promise." I let out a cold laugh. "Mr. and Mrs. Shen, if I recall correctly, my parents died the day I signed the paper, severing our relationship." They froze as if struck by lightning. My mother clung to me, sobbing hysterically. "Zhiyan, I was foolish. Please forgive me and come home. I will make everything up to you. I will love you with my life." Looking at her tear-stained face, I felt absolutely nothing but a cold, heavy numbness. I pried her fingers off me and said firmly, "Mrs. Shen, please show some self-respect." Seeing this, my father fell to his knees to kowtow. I quickly stood up to avoid it. Staring at my parents, who seemed to have aged 10 years in a second, I felt only a faint, mocking amusement. "What is this emotionally blackmailing me again?" They looked up in shock. I continued slowly. 5 years ago, you brought me back, promising to make things up to me. But what did you actually do? You forced me to give my bedroom to your adopted son. You let my fiancée abandon me on my birthday. You made Zinran abort my child just to spare your precious adopted son's feelings. You even framed me for his crime, sending me to prison with a criminal record. And you watched me get beaten by a mob, leaving me half dead in the hospital without a care. With every word, their faces grew paler, their bodies trembling. The past they tried to ignore was now laid bare. You called me your biological son, but did you ever show me a shred of real love? I answered my own question, my voice tight. No. You only brought me back out of obligation. All your love and devotion went to him. Now that you know he is a liar and a fake, you regret it. So what? Am I supposed to be grateful, forget everything, and go back to being your disposable scapegoat, the son you throw away whenever it is convenient? It is too late. The moment you chose him over me, you lost the right to be my parents. That document severing our ties was my final gesture of dignity. Taking a deep breath, I declared, I am Shen Zhiyan. I have nothing to do with the Shen family. Do not disturb my life again. I turned and walked away. My mother shrieked my name, trying to chase me, but collapsing. My father sat slumped on the floor, weeping silently. I did not look back. Walking out into the freezing night air, I leaned against the wall and finally slid down. Hours later, the surgery light turned off. The doctor emerged exhausted, but with good news. The blade had missed her heart by centimeters. Despite severe blood loss, she was out of danger and needed rest. By the next afternoon, the anesthesia wore off. As consciousness returned, a sharp pain flared in her back. Ignoring the pain, she rasped, "Where is Zhiyan?" My parents exchanged uneasy glances. Sensing the truth, she ripped the IV out of her arm, ignoring her tearing wound, and screamed, "Did he leave again? Did he abandon me again? Answer me, did he leave me behind?" Frightened by her hysteria. My mother sobbed, "Shinran, please, calm down. You need to recover first. Zhiyan is gone," he told us. She grabbed my mother's arm with crushing force. What did he say? Pale with pain, my mother whimpered. He said, "Do not look for him." Those words were a final verdict, dragging her straight into despair. She let go, staring blankly at the ceiling before breaking into a hysterical laugh that quickly turned into sobbing. "I owe him a life, a child, 5 years of youth, and countless betrayals," she muttered wildly. "How can I ever repay him when he won't even give me the chance?" Doctors and nurses rushed in to sedate her. As the drugs took hold, she quieted down, staring blankly at the ceiling as tears streamed down. She had lost completely. Even risking her life couldn't earn a single look from me. After leaving the hospital, she was a changed person. She stopped trying to get close, choosing to watch over me silently like a ghost. She was everywhere, yet nowhere. During a brutal winter blizzard in Montreal, I collapsed in my apartment with a high fever. Unable to reach me, Xiaoyue desperately called the number Shinran had left. Shinran broke in. She stayed by my hospital bed for 3 days and nights. When I woke up to see her hollow, exhausted face, I rasped, "Thanks. How much were the medical bills? I will pay you back." She flinched. "Must we be so distant?" "We were never close to begin with," I replied flatly. Heartbroken, she stared at me for a moment before stumbling out. Still in her thin hospital gown, with blood soaking through her bandages, she knelt in the snow outside. Passers-by stared, but she ignored them. Xiaoyue ran out, pleading, "Are you crazy? Your wounds will get infected. You will die." She shook her head. "I owe him." Meanwhile, my parents tried their own way to atone. They waited at my apartment for days. When my mother saw me, she burst into tears. "Zhiyan, come home. I will do anything for you." I pried her hands off. "Mrs. Shen, please." My father fell to his knees on the cold floor. He begged, "Please forgive us." I laughed as tears fell. "It is too late. You lost the right to be my parents the moment you abandoned me. That paper was the final line. Do not bother me." I went inside. I shut the door, cutting off their desperate cries. 4 months later, spring arrived in Montreal. My life was back on track. I found a good translation job and began sharing quiet dinners and movies with Xiaoyue. Shinran watched from a distance, her heart aching, yet she never dared to approach. But one day, she heard a rumor that her ex-fiancé was about to receive a marriage proposal. The last string in her mind snapped. She rushed to the riverside restaurant just as I walked out, holding Yue's hand. Pushing Yue aside, she stared at me with bloodshot eyes. "Are you marrying her?" I replied. "None of your business." "You are my fiancé," she shrieked. I stared coldly. "We are over." I never agreed, she screamed, grabbing my arm. When Yue tried to intervene, they ended up in a scuffle until Yue was knocked unconscious. She dragged me to the railing. Staring into my cold eyes, she laughed softly. "If I die, will you forgive me?" "No," I said flatly. "Your death would only be a relief." She nodded, a desperate look in her eyes. "Fine. Then I will die for you." Before I could react, she leaped over the railing into the freezing river. My chest tightened as I ran to the edge, calling her name while dialing the police. Below, she clung to a pillar, shivering. "See, I can die for you." "Are you crazy? Get up here," I yelled. "Only if you forgive me," she whimpered. "Are you threatening me?" I snapped. Yes, Zhiyan, I am leveraging my life. Forgive me or watch me die. Never, I roared. She smiled sadly. That desolate smile was terrifying in the dim light. She let go and sank into the dark water. I will treat you better in our next life, she whispered. I leaned over the railing, staring at the pitch-black river. Time seemed to stop, save for the rushing water. After a few seconds, I turned away, ran to the unconscious Yue, and called for an ambulance. I never looked back at the river. Jinren was saved, but the ice-cold water took her sanity. It took her a month to recover, but she emerged a changed person. She stopped harassing me, never crossing my path intentionally. Instead, she opened a quiet coffee shop 2 blocks from my apartment. My parents returned home. Every year on my birthday, a large sum of money appeared in my account. I never touched it. Back home, my mother sank into deep depression, weeping over old photos. My father aged rapidly. Soon news of Shen Yunzhou came. Shinran had gathered all the evidence and handed it over to the police. Yunzhou was sent to prison, where he reportedly lost his mind. I stayed in Montreal, and a year later, Yue and I had a small, quiet wedding. Su Shinran never got an invitation. On my wedding day, he shut down his shop and spent the whole day by the St. Lawrence River like a silent statue. Since then, my life has been peaceful and happy. On weekend afternoons, I like to visit the bookstore across from Waiting Cafe and order fruit tea. I choose a window seat to read all day. Across the street, behind the glass, Su Shinran quietly brews coffee and wipes down cups. Occasionally, he looks up, his gaze drifting over the busy street to find my quiet silhouette. We are separated by a road of endless crowds. The rush of people and cars feels like parallel worlds, moving quietly, never intersecting. One sunny spring afternoon, I was browsing the bookstore shelves. My fingers brushed the spine of a Chinese poetry collection. Driven by some strange whim, I pulled it out, flipped it open, and my eyes froze on a line. It read, "You are the person I would unplug my oxygen tank just to kiss." I paused. After a brief moment, I closed the book, returned it to the shelf, and headed to my window seat. As I sat down, my gaze drifted across the street to the spotless windows of Waiting Cafe. Su Shinran stood behind the counter, head down, completely focused on making a pour-over coffee. I watched him for a few seconds, then slowly looked away. Taking a sip of my cooled fruit tea, I looked back down at the open pages. Suddenly the door chime jingled and Xia Yue walked in. She was holding a small bouquet of fresh sunflowers and walked toward me with a bright smile. "Did I keep you waiting? I saw these on the way and thought of you." I looked up, took the flowers, and smiled back. Soon the warm sunlight bathed us in a golden glow. Across the street, Su Shinran poured the hot coffee into a porcelain cup. Looking up, his eyes drifted toward the bookstore window. There the silhouette he longed for turned her head, offering the woman beside her a soft, genuine smile. He watched silently for a moment, then lowered his eyes. He picked up the tray and walked toward his waiting customer. Outside, the sun was warm and the sunflowers swayed gently in the breeze. Spring, it seemed, had finally arrived.